This is Attack of the 20th Century. Thank you for joining us as we explore science fiction, fantasy, and horror films of the 20th century. I'm your host, Jeff.
And I'm your other host, Kim.
Welcome to episode 49, where we continue our spooky season series with the 1973 film Theatre of Blood. Look for us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Attack of the 20th Century. That's 20th. We post our next movie selection there. You can comment, give your thoughts, and they just might make it on the air. As always, you're welcome to email us at attackofthe20thcentury@outlook.com. As always, we start with what you've been watching lately. So, Kim, what you got?
Well, I know it's spooky season, but it's also a little bit of murder mystery season for me, which is one of my favorite genres.
Oh, yeah.
So PBS had released their newest season of, I think it's called Unforgotten. So I've really enjoyed that. It's pretty dark.
Okay.
It's kind of a, it's not a hopeful, fun story. But on a funner murder mystery note, we did just watch, was that last night? I think
just last night, yeah.
We got to go to the movie theaters and see the newest Poirot by Kenneth Branagh, which is A Haunting in Venice.
Yes.
Yeah.
What did you think of that?
I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. It's been a minute since I've seen Death on the Nile and Murder on the Orient Express. But I'm pretty sure it's at least tied with Murder on the Orient Express for me.
Yeah.
Death on the Nile was not my favorite, for sure. It was a fun watch, but it wasn't even, it was sort of remotely close to the book, but they changed a lot, which I realize you have to do. The funny thing is, this one, Haunting in Venice, was almost nothing like the book. But I knew that going into it. I'd read some reviews and whatnot, and I've read the book.
Yeah.
And so it would have been, to make the movie that Kenneth Branagh made, he could not have based it perfectly on the book, if that makes sense. Yeah. But the movie was fantastic. And there was enough elements in it that I was like, okay, yeah. But his portrayal of Poirot, I think, is getting better. He's refining it. Yeah.
I don't think it did all that great in the box office.
Oh, sad.
You know what would be cool, though, is if they turned it into like a Netflix series or something like that. Maybe slim down the budget a little more and just do, hour-long episodes or hour and a half or something. I don't know if he's going to get too many more chances in the movie theater.
No, that's a shame because I really felt like this one was like he shined. And you know who else? I like Tina Fey. I've always enjoyed Tina Fey.
Yeah.
But I didn't know how she was going to do in this style of movie. And I thought she kind of killed it. Did you like her?
Oh, I did. I thought she worked out well. Because she was funny, but she wasn't over the top.
No, it wasn't SNL funny.
No.
It was just enough kind of, I don't know, chutzpah, if I'm using that word right. But she kind of gave it to Poirot, And that's kind of her character in the book, too. Because she is one of the characters from the original book. And
it had horror elements, which I thought was well done.
Yes, yeah.
And it's still a PG-13 movie, I think.
I don't even remember. We took our 11-year-old. So.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's PG-13, but
lots of jump scares though.
Yeah.
So that's fun. That was but nothing too. It's dark.
Yeah.
It's a seance and there's murder and whatever.
Yeah.
But it's not gory dark per se. There's a little bit of ickiness, but not anything horrific. Yeah.
So me and our youngest have been up pretty much every night.
Yes.
Watching the Avengers, and you're like, the Avengers? Dude, what's going on? That's pretty old school. Well, I'm going really old school.
Yeah, not Marvel Avengers.
Not Marvel Avengers, but I'm talking the British espionage show. This went from 1961 to 1969. We started on season 5, because it was the first season in color.
Oh, okay.
And was more accessible for our son.
Yeah.
Now we've decided to go back and watch some of the older ones, season 4. But what's notable about season 4 and season 5, and if you know anything about the Avengers, the most famous duo in that is Steed and Peel.
Right.
So we have John Steed, played by Patrick Macnee, and then Emma Peel, played by Diana Rigg.
Yeah.
Which is a fantastic tie-in to this movie that we're doing today.
That is true.
We are both, and our youngest is 11, like we just said a moment ago, and he is all about this show, and I am too. And a big part of it, if you haven't seen it, it's a little James Bondy, but it's comical.
Yeah.
A lot of it's tongue in cheek, and there is this great relationship between Steed and Peel. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those, there's a flirtiness about the relationship, but it's strongly based in just friendship and closeness and togetherness, but they never cross that line.
That's where it's very much unlike James Bond.
Yes. But, I mean, when I think of John Steed and the characterization by Patrick McNee, he plays it so cool, like, because he's upbeat all the time. And you remember, it reminds me of the 10th Doctor in Doctor Who. Remember how we talked about how David Tennant, he'll look at something awful coming his way, an alien or whatever, and you and I are thinking, ugh, you know.
This is bad.
This is bad. And he's like, well, look at you. You're beautiful. You know, like, where did you come from?
Right.
You know, he'll go off on that. Well, Steve kind of channels that a little bit. You know, and this is the 1960s. I get it. But
yeah, so he's not channeling
He's not channeling
Tennant.
Tennant. But
maybe Tennant channeled him.
Maybe. But he's doing that vibe, you know, like he'll see something that's a really rotten situation and he's cute about it. Like
or he sees an opportunity or has something quippy and funny.
Yeah, exactly. And Diana Rigg, I can see why all these men were in love with her during that time. And she did become a Bond girl. So she is beautiful.
Right.
But a big part of it is just her reaction to things.
Yes. And she's very clever.
Extremely smart. This is a tangent we probably don't want to go down. But talk about empowered women and action stars. Like, she's a kung fu expert. She's brilliant. She's sophisticated. And it's all organic. The way they do everything is super organic.
And she's not threatened by what Steed is bringing to the table.
Yes.
I love that.
And he's not threatened by her. Like, it's just a great partnership. And I'm like, it's the 1960s, and we have this great blueprint right there. Mm-hmm. It just seems like we've talked about this before. I don't want to go down that tangent, but
sure.
I think today that we struggle with female characterization in film.
For sure.
You know, we're like, well, we want empowerment. Well, empowerment means X, Y, and Z. It was like, well, this is an amazing portrayal of what a true equality of male and female is in TV form. Anyway, so I went off on that tangent when I said I wouldn't. But if you're not familiar with the show, if you say, oh, I want to start from the beginning, it's not, I don't know if it is one of those shows, because the first season, I think Steed is like a secondary character, and I haven't seen it. So, but that guy left the show, and then Steed became the lead, and they brought in Honor Blackman, who plays Pussy Galore in Goldfinger. And she was also Hera in Jason and the Argonauts.
I was like, I know the name from something else. What is it? Yep. Okay.
So she stayed for a couple seasons. Like I said, it was black and white. Diana Rigg joined the show. Season 4, that was black and white. And that's the one me and my son are working through. Season 5 was the color one. We went through that whole season. When I say there's a whole season, I'm telling you there's 161 episodes total of this thing. Wow. And then we saw Emma leave the show, and then they try to introduce another lady. And I think it just fizzled out, unfortunately.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And then they lost their chemistry, right? You know.
So I've only seen a couple of the colored episodes with you guys, and I will say, just from an aesthetic appeal, like, it's bright colors. It's very 1960s, and I just had fun watching like her costume changes, and like she has like a definite palette she's working from. Wardrobe is putting her in. I just found that kind of fascinating. It was a fun watch, and the intro is super, and the and the outro, I guess, right? Like super quirky 60s, like dancing, and it's just kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy and it's fun.
All right, so let's talk about Theater of Blood. Just remember that if you don't want spoilers, you're going to want to hit pause now, go watch that movie, and come back and join us later. All right, so Theater of Blood, like you said, is from 1973, and it has a whopping 88% on Rotten Tomatoes. That's the tomato meter, and the audience score is a closely matched 81%.
Nice.
So this is a well-liked, well-respected film.
Yes. I saw recently like a listing of Vincent Price's top films, and this was in the top 3.
Oh.
I think, and I know allegedly this is his favorite film that he did.
Oh, okay.
Because he was a big Shakespeare fan, and you think with every murder, he got to portray a different character and really ham it up.
Yes. And he does ham it up.
Okay, Theater of Blood. Film begins with a theater critic being called by the police to an old building to evict a group of drunken vagrants.
Yeah.
The homeless crew break out various forms of cutlery and murder the critic.
Yeah, it's pretty rough.
We learn that one of the policemen, a shaggy-headed, sunglass-wearing reject from the Muppets' Dr. Teeth Band, and his leader, called Edward Lionheart, played by Vincent Price, are heading up this group of misfits. They meet at an abandoned theater and put on Shakespearean performances, complete with a giant machine that simulates audience applause. Another critic is ushered into the theater by our groovy, shaggy-headed friend and ultimately murdered by Lionheart, who was thought before now to be dead. The 2 critics murdered were part of this circle of critics, and it's now apparent that someone is picking them off one by one for revenge.
Dun, dun, dun.
In another attack, Lionheart and his cohort hide in a giant treasure chest inside a critic's home. At night, they emerge from the chest, put the couple to sleep. In one of the film's most disturbing sequences, mockingly put on a doctor-nurse routine where they decapitate the critic. Another critic is lured away by Lionheart's daughter, Edwina, played by Diana Riggs, that we talked about earlier.
There she is.
To judge their theater group. Of course, this is a ruse. She uses her beauty and gets him to come to the theater where his heart is ripped out and sent to the remaining living critics. 1 pound of flesh, to be exact. At this point, we have to point out that every murder is performed as a living Shakespearean play, mimicking murders from specific plays that were part of a series performed by Lionheart years ago.
Right.
Then we learned from this flashback scene that Lionheart felt that his performances merited some big critics award, and he showed up at one of their post-ceremony celebrations. Right. He lectures them all before reciting some Shakespeare and throws himself from this balcony into a river.
Yeah, well, the Thames.
The Thames. Yeah, that's true.
The river.
The river. Later, we find out that he survived the jump and is tended to by the homeless community, which explains why they followed him now.
Yeah, he became their leader.
At this point, the critics each have police protection, but yet one of the critics is allowed to go on a wine tasting. The party, however, is made up of Lionheart's homeless gang, and they drown him in a vat of wine.
Ugh.
Edwina is then arrested as she has the motive. And she has to have done it because her father's dead, as far as we know.
That's right.
Then Lionheart openly confronts Devlin, who's like the leader of the critics.
He's the head critic.
He's the head guy. And he's kind of our male lead, I guess. Like, our good guy, right? They have this big fencing duel where Lionheart shows off his amazing athleticism and competence with a blade.
Yes, he does.
He spares Devlin, though, letting him know that they have unfinished business. This act, though, leads the police to say, hey, we know Lionheart's still alive.
Right.
And he's confessed to these murders to Devlin, so they release Edwina. So then in another sequence, Lionheart is acting as a masseuse. He's been visiting one of the critic's wives for months, giving her home treatment. The critic is then given an anonymous tip that, hey, you better go home and check out what's happening in your home because this dude is with your wife right now.
Right.
And, of course, they've picked a guy that's like a jealous kind of guy.
Yes.
He shows up, see what's going on, murders his wife, and then, of course, he's arrested by the police.
Yeah.
Another critic goes in for her hair to be styled, and unfortunately is received by Lionheart, mimicking this hairdresser. It's kind of a comical sequence, right?
Yeah, it is pretty funny.
To see him act, he's definitely acting kind of as a gay hairdresser with this huge afro.
Yeah, he has a giant afro, and he has an assistant who also has like a littler afro. Yeah.
It's pretty funny.
Yeah.
It's all funny until they hook her up to this curling iron apparatus, which is kind of like a electric chair.
Yeah.
And they fry her to pieces, basically.
It's terrible.
It's terrible. The last critic targeted before Devlin is Mr. Meridew, who is made to believe that he's on a cooking television show that showed up at his house. And he is fed his beloved babies, his 2 toy poodles. Once he knows the truth, they pin him down and they force feed him to death.
Yeah.
As for Devlin...
It's gruesome.
Yeah, it's gruesome. As for Devlin, Edwina reached out and agreed to take him to her father The police have a tracker in the car as well as the police officer in the trunk. Devlin is clubbed on the head, taken to the theater where Edwina drives the car with the policeman in it and leaves it on the train tracks where it is railroaded. Mm-hmm. That's pretty rough. So Devlin wakes up bound in a chair with 2 knives strapped to a small car on a track, leading to his eyes. Lionheart wants to redo the ceremony from years ago, demanding that Devlin gives him this award.
Yeah, it looks like a Grammy Award or a Tony or something, a little Oscar.
Yes. In this odd reveal, Lionheart's assistant takes off the wig, and it's revealed that this is actually Edwina, Lionheart's daughter.
Yep.
That's kind of been the shaggy Muppet reject.
He looks like he's from Electric Mayhem.
Yeah.
But it's the daughter.
Oh. The police show up, free Devlin, while Lionheart and his daughter set the theater ablaze. Their army of vagrants turns on them, clubbing Edwina over the head, presumably killing her at this point.
Right.
Lionheart, with Edwina in arms, goes to the top of the building, reciting Shakespeare once again. We have this big explosion of fire, and they plummet to their death.
Yeah, I think they kind of fall through the roof back into the theater, right?
Yeah. It's a little unclear, like, the construction of this building.
Yeah.
They're definitely on the roof.
Kind of twisty-turny.
Exposed outside, and then when the explosion happens, they land inside the theater.
Yeah, so I'm assuming the roof collapses underneath them or something.
When did you first see this film, and what was your first impression?
Well, I had to think on this, but because I did grow up seeing quite a bit of Vincent Price, like that wasn't uncommon in my household. But I think I first saw this one after you and I were married. But, like 20 years ago, early in the marriage, because I think you had it on VHS tape or something.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So that was probably the first time I actually saw, or that I remember seeing this one.
Mm-hmm. And then you just saw it again for the first time in 20 years, right? Last week.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like we may have watched it more than once years back. But yeah, for the first time in a long time, I saw it a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. I think you're right. I first saw this movie in high school. I'm pretty sure it was my junior year. I caught it on TV late one night, and when I saw it coming on again, it was during the time of VHS.
Right.
I popped in the tape real quick, hit record, and I probably saw this a bunch of times when I was younger, in high school. And my first impression was, I think I had never really seen this kind of humor in horror before.
You're right.
Because it was pretty unsettling, I think, but intriguing to me. Mm-hmm. Like that whole operation scene we talked about.
Oh, yeah.
It's played for laughs, but there's awful things happening.
It's pretty gruesome. Yeah.
Bloody, and he's just hamming it up the whole time. Yeah. And that really stuck with me. It was just so odd and different than anything I had been exposed to at that point.
Right.
And two, I think as a high schooler with big emotions, and I'm a songwriter, and I was writing poetry, there was something really appealing about Vincent Price's character who,
so passionate
about this. Like, he loved Shakespeare more than anybody in the history of mankind, right?
And there's a lot of people that love Shakespeare.
Yeah. He was, again, just on fire for the material that he loved.
To a fault.
Let's
be clear.
Yeah, obviously. And he went in this horrible direction with it, right?
Yeah.
But as a high schooler, again, I'm giving you my historical perspective.
Yeah.
As a high schooler, you feel like an outcast.
Sure. That's
true. You know that scene where he goes in with the critics and they're all kind of making fun of him.
Yeah,
they're laughing at him. And he realizes, like, he's kind of an alien, right?
Yeah, he's never going to be in with these people.
Yeah. He's an outsider. And these people that he's been trying so hard to impress, he just couldn't get in on the inner circle, right?
Yeah.
And I thought, like, as a teenager, I was never in the inner circle either. I was always kind of on the fringe, right?
Yeah.
And so
you felt for this guy.
I felt for him, right? But you know what it was? He clinged to his art. And that spoke to me. So anyway, I really loved this movie. I recorded it, and then of course I met you, and it's like, I got this movie I want you to watch. It's great.
You're like, you like British things?
Yeah. All right, now's the time when we talk about standouts. So my first standout I'll mention is the direction and camera work. I love some of the shots in this film, and I remember early on commenting to you, I love how there's a lot of the shots where the camera's looking up at the actors.
Right.
There's one scene in particular I think of where Lionheart appears as a Viking warrior, and he just kind of like this is lowered down from this platform.
Right.
He looks like he's 10 feet tall and this massive, crazy Viking, and it's Vincent Price, right?
Right. I mean, he is a tall guy. I think,
he is tall,
but he looks massive.
There's another scene, kind of in that first 10 minutes, from the floor, looking up at the first murder victim, right? And he's kind of dying, and blood's dripping down towards the camera, and it's like through this grate, and you see Vincent Price standing over him in the policeman outfit.
Yes.
And he says something like, "But you're dead." And he leans down and he's like, "No, again, another critical failure on your part. It is you who is dead."
Yes. So it's just dawning on me now. Like, I know you've mentioned this camera work before. And to me, it's interesting camera work. And it's a little unsettling because it's just not the perspective you're used to looking from. Mm-hmm. But I'm realizing now, like, this whole thing is based on him being a stage actor. And it's putting you in the position of where an observer of a theater production would be. It's putting the audience, like you are in the audience looking up at a stage.
Yes.
And I just am now having that light bulb moment in my head.
Yeah,
so you probably
that's
already
awesome.
Came to that conclusion, but
no, I guess I hadn't thought about it. But you're right. Mm-hmm. There's another scene which I think is amazing, where they're in the theater at the end, and he realizes the cops are coming, and he's like ready to burn it down. When I say burn it down, you see a scene looking at Vincent Price, and he has a torch, and he does this recitation of Shakespeare, and then hurls this torch up towards curtains, which then start to light on fire.
Yes.
They actually lit this place on fire for the film.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So again, I mean, it's this old building, and they're lighting it on fire.
Yeah.
For real.
London hasn't done well with fires in the past.
No.
So how did they pull that off?
No, but it's an amazing shot, right?
Yeah.
It's all real. And then as far as the direction in general, the tone is very diabolic. You have these vicious, brutal murders, often with this light, kind of English-sounding music.
Yeah, the music is always a little off-kilter of what's happening in the scene.
Yes, right. And the surgery scene in particular stands out. They're playing kind of light comedic music. Mm-hmm. Price... And of course, Diana Rigg, who's dressed up as a man at this point, they're just being silly. Meanwhile,
but they're
decapitating
viciously murdering someone. Yeah, decapitating a man.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I will say, because we haven't, I normally covered that at the beginning, and I haven't. But is this rated R? I think it's rated R for the gore, and it is a bit much. If you're not in now, it pales in comparison to a modern slasher film still,
right.
But it is for us. It's pretty gory.
Yeah.
So just tuck that away if you need to know that. Okay, so I'm going to say my standouts are probably the great character actors we have. So there's the critics. Each of them only get a few lines, and you see them kind of in little blips here and there in the movie. But they're a little absurd, almost like caricatures of people. And so you remember every single one of them.
Right.
Like there's the silly guy with his poodles, they're his babies, and like he's just so larger than life and silly, like he's that guy, But there's the first murder victim that he was, went to this building to throw out some homeless people and then ends up being murdered. Yeah. And the crazy thing about that one is you're so frustrated with the cops because it's before you realize. I thought that was a brilliant stretch in the movie too.
Right.
That very first murder, you think these are legit cops that are supposed to be helping this guy remove the vagrants from an abandoned building that I guess this guy manages or something.
Right.
And they're doing nothing. They're like so useless to him. The cops are just, you're like, mad. I'm mad at the cops. And I've seen the movie before and I'm like, oh, you're not doing your, and then it dawns on me. Oh yeah, that's Vincent Price and his cohort. Like, they're not going to help them. But you don't realize that at first. I think it's a brilliant opening to the movie. And then we have, is it Harry Andrews? We called him Budget Charlton Heston.
Yeah.
And Charlton Heston in this movie because he does kind of look like a budget Charlton Heston.
Yeah,
right?
he does. Yeah, he's kind of a ladies' man to a degree.
Yeah, he's suave a bit.
He flirts with Diana Riggs, puts his hand on her knee and stuff.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. So, no, there were some really great character actors. And then, of course, all of the Shakespearean characters were played just really over the top as you would expect a stage production to be done.
Yeah.
It's really well done.
Yeah, which leads me to Vincent Price as Lionheart. I think of all the films he's been in, this is the one where he's been able to stretch his legs the most as an actor.
Yeah, he gets to do everything in this.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't remember how many different performances they have him do, right? But at least 6, 7 different Shakespearean performances.
Yeah, it depends on how many critics there were, and I don't remember now off the top of my head how many total that there were, but yeah.
I think what's really funny about this, or kind of ironic, is they all deemed him a horrible actor.
Right.
And he tricked almost every single one of them.
Yeah.
Like
truly.
He sucked them in with his acting chops, you know. So, I mean, there, again.
He gets the last laugh, maybe.
He does get the last laugh to a degree. Lots asked of him. He plays so many different parts. He's funny, but in this kind of odd, menacing way.
Right.
It's a little unsettling just how he has comedic chops while horrible things are happening on the screen.
Yeah, which this is like the definition of dark humor, right? Which I'm not typically a fan of. And I will say, like, I can see where he's hamming it up for laughs here and see the humor in it. But that's not what draws me to this movie, because I don't just inherently love dark humor. But it's just so cleverly done is the draw for me here.
Yeah, right.
All right, so even the great movies have setbacks, so we're going to talk setbacks now, right?
That's right. So something that's always irritated me, even as a teenager watching this for the first time, is the very final scene, after Vincent Price, he's holding Edwina in his arms, there's this huge explosion, they plummet to their death, and, it's kind of been a big moment, really big moment. And they cut to Devlin talking about it with another cop. Mm-hmm. And he makes a joke, basically. He says something along the lines of, Lionheart always overacted, but one thing you can't take away from him, he knew how to make an exit.
Right.
And I think it's supposed to be, haha, that's funny. But it's just, to me, it hurt the flow of the film because you have this big moment with Price dying. Mm-hmm. They have the funny joke, and then it goes to this big, majestic score, like real dramatic score.
Yeah.
And I never understood why they jammed that in there.
Right. We didn't need the joke.
Yeah.
It wasn't even that funny.
No, it wasn't funny. Or maybe it's like today, maybe you would make it a post-credit scene.
Yeah. Yeah.
That would be fine.
For sure.
But, I don't know. It's just something that irritated me before, and watching it again, I always felt like, that hurts the flow of this film.
It does, yeah. It hurts the big finish.
Yep.
For sure.
What about you?
Okay, so I think my only beef really is with Diana Rigg. She's amazing in this, right? And I hadn't seen it in a while when we watched it again recently, and I had forgotten the whole daughter storyline. So I'm watching this guy who's always in, he's got this kind of 1970s almost afro haircut, a big mustache, and he's wearing aviator sunglasses all the time. And I'm like, man, this is like, Vincent Price's right-hand man, who is this person? But then they give it away. Like at some point we know, it's revealed to us, right, that it is actually his daughter. Yeah. She knows he's alive and she's been helping him this whole time. But then there's like a big reveal again later?
Yeah.
That she's been helping with the murders the whole time?
Yeah, we know that she's part of this because she helps lure Budget Charlton Heston to his death.
That's right.
So it's like, well, we know that she's in on these murders and we haven't seen her yet.
Right, exactly. So we're just not sure like why it's a secret. And then, we could have had a better reveal. We could have just kept it a secret the whole time. Yeah. And then it was the big reveal at the end. Right. But I don't know. They didn't play it out that way.
It felt weird, like you said. It felt like they had this big reveal in mind. And then at some point they improvised and said, hey, why don't we have Diana Rigg come out looking beautiful.
Yeah. So
lots of makeup, flirty.
She's been this scruffy guy the whole time, but now she's playing like sex appeal to lure this other guy in.
Yeah.
So it's like, wait a minute. What? Yeah.
So we've talked about Vincent Price a lot. We've talked a little bit about Diana Rigg and how great she was in the film. Mm-hmm. And we talked about the character actors quite a bit. What did you think about Devlin specifically, though? Because he is kind of our male lead, somebody that we're supposed to be cheering on. But he doesn't really look like a male lead.
No. And honestly, he's a bit slimy.
Yeah.
Like, I think you come away from this, me personally, even though Vincent Price is a horrible person and viciously murders. We've said that like 15 times, but literally viciously murders with the help of clearly his disturbed daughter.
Yeah.
So many people, you'd come away with a little bit of sympathy for him and almost zero for Devlin.
Yeah.
Right? Like he feels like a slimy, I don't know, critic.
Yeah.
Not a critic, not a good critic, not a critic that you're ready to read his article in the next magazine because you're interested in what he has to say about things in the art world.
Yeah.
Like, he's doing it for the money, the prestige. I don't know, he comes across slimy to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let me ask you, did his looks bother you at all? Like a male lead that's kind of balding, not very handsome?
Oh, you can only say that because you're a grown man with a very full head of hair.
But, you know, he's not a Brad Pitt, right? He's not a Tom Cruise.
He's no leading guy type. I'm trying to think if there's any other leading men that you like that are balding. I'm sure that there are. Like I
mean, I like Woody Allen, but that's a completely different film, right?
Yeah. That's
Albert Brooks.
Yeah, but there's a self-deprecation there that goes along with it, whereas this guy is not self-deprecating in the least.
Yeah.
Like he's very sure of himself.
He's a little high and mighty, right?
Yeah.
Now, what about in the sequence when the daggers are coming towards his eyes? Like, other than just feeling like, oh, I would hate to get stabbed in the eyeballs, were you really worried for him? Would it have bothered you if he had been blinded for life? You know?
I mean, yeah, it would have bothered me because it's gruesome.
Right.
Like, it was rough. Like, and I put my fingers in my eyes every day because I wear contacts, but I hate the thought of something happening to an eyeball. So
yeah.
I did feel for him then just because of the heinousness of that act.
But as far as like sympathy for the character, like, do you think it hurt the movie to a degree that we didn't love him or we didn't have much sympathy for him as a lead?
Yeah, potentially. But I don't know. Vincent Price eats up so much of the scenery here. Like, I don't really care about Devlin.
Yeah. Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. It's one of those odd movies where the bad guy is doing horrible things the whole movie, like you said a moment ago, but you still like him.
Yeah.
He's still really likable.
Exactly. He's kind of like if the Grinch went really bad, you know? Like, even the Grinch is a bad guy, but you love the Grinch, you know? This is the Grinch, like, on his worst day ever, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. There's something, like you said, and maybe it's the whole, like, he's kind of, I don't know, he's a little bit everyman, like he's getting his comeuppance on people that, now, granted, maybe he really wasn't the great actor that he thought he was in his mind, and he should not have taken justice into his own hands. And murdering people is not justice for bad critics' reviews.
Right.
However, there is something that feels a little justifiable.
Yeah.
That's terrible. I can't believe I'm saying that.
Cool. So now's the time we talk about our favorite scene from the film. So, Kim, what's yours?
Okay, well, most of the scenes are relatively gory, so I have a hard time using the word favorite in front of them. But I will say, now that we've bashed Devlin, the head critic, pretty terribly for being a balding, slimy guy. Sorry, those of you who have a lack of hair in the world. I, too, also do not have very much hair for a female.
You got great hair, by the way. Lots of great hair.
Sure. Okay, so I actually think one of my favorite scenes, and the one where I actually saw the humor in it, is towards the end when Devlin is the last critic alive, and they're about, they have him in the theater, and they've got that whole eye stabbing contraption rigged up. They're about to take him out, and Devlin sticks it to him. They want to, Vincent Price, Lionheart wants to recreate the moment of the award ceremony where he didn't get the award, but make Devlin say his name.
Yeah.
And Devlin won't do it. They say all the same things that were said at the award ceremony, and Devlin still says the other guy's name that actually won the award.
Yeah.
So I gotta give it. I mean, that's like you're about to die, and you're like, nope, I made the decision. So maybe he wasn't as slimy as I just made him out to be, because he was like, I made this decision and I'm sticking with it.
Yeah.
And then he says, I found the line that he says, well, get it over with then, just so you don't have to make me listen to that demented rubbish of yours. Go on, kill me then. Like, he's like, I'm not negotiating with terrorists, dude.
Yeah.
So I did enjoy that part where he's just like, nope, like, you can kill me if you want. I still don't think you're that good of an actor, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah. Critics.
Yeah. Hey, he's doing his job, I guess, right?
Well, and then I thought it was funny that Lionheart said, well, you're not going to die. Like, the last thing you're going to see on earth is me getting this award.
Yes, that's right. Because then he's going to stab his eyes out, so he can't see anything else.
Yeah. Yeah, my favorite scene is probably the most emotional scene in the film. Mm. And that's when Edwina shows up at the post-ceremony party. At this point, Lionheart's lectured everybody, the critics, that is, and said, basically, you got it all wrong.
Right.
What's wrong with you guys? He's lecturing them, kind of making a fool of himself in front of everybody, right? And they're starting to tell jokes at this point.
He looks rather pitiful.
Yeah. And then she says to him really delicately, very sweetly, Father, please come away. You mustn't do this. You're only helping them to hurt you more. And then he comes up to her and he's just like, Edwina, oh my God, what have I done? And then he does this whole thing where he goes out on the balcony and he's just kind of brooding and he's reciting some Shakespeare.
Yeah.
And at that point, he decides to end his life in front of his enemies and his one ally, his daughter. Mm-hmm. That whole thing, just Diana Rigg, when she comes out and says that to him so tenderly.
Yeah, she does.
It's like, just come away. Let's get out of here.
And the look on her face is very, it's a tender look. And I think she even has like a tear in her eye. It's very convincing.
Yeah.
It's very, yeah.
And so, and I know this is horror comedy, right? There's the comedic aspects. Mm-hmm. But really what sunk its teeth into me were these true emotional moments.
Yeah.
And then later on, when she gets clubbed over the head to death, right? He's lost his one ally.
Yeah, that's true. The one person who truly felt like he was the greatest ever.
And I think that's why I mentioned the setback earlier, why I hated the little quip at the end, because I thought, like, I'm really invested in this,
You wanted him to kind of go out with his big moment.
Let him go out with his big moment. Because...
No cheap jokes.
Right. Because... Like, it's a tragedy.
Just
like a Shakespearean play. Like, it's a tragedy. Like, this guy who had a lot to offer the world to a degree, right? He could never be accepted, and he was rejected by society, and then he went a horrible direction, right?
Right.
He went down, like, I'm going to murder people and torture them.
The darkest timeline.
Yeah, the darkest timeline, right? So, it is a true tragedy. So, that's why I really love that scene. And, of course, I told you I love... just the way she acts, the tenderness, like there's true love. It feels like a daughter-father thing going on there.
In admiration, yeah.
Yeah. But let me ask you this. So we talked about favorite scene, like from the deaths that we saw and the Shakespearean performances we saw, like is there a Shakespearean play you would like to go check out now as a result of watching this, like that you're interested in?
Well, I will say he hit on some. I do love Shakespeare, but I have not exhausted all of Shakespeare's plays in what I have read. So Troilus and Cressida, I've never read that, so I would like to read that one. I'm pretty familiar with Merchant of Venice, which he covers that one. That's when he cut out the heart of the critic because that was a pound of flesh. And then what was
Julius Caesar?
Julius Caesar. I'm pretty well versed in. Henry VI. I don't have a lot of context for that one.
Yeah.
And there was another one. Oh, what's the Cymbeline? I've never read Cymbeline.
No.
So I'm very unfamiliar with that one. So it does make me want to go and
check that one out.
Read some more Shakespeare.
Yeah, I think Titus Andronicus.
Oh, yes. That's another one I'm not super familiar with.
Yeah, I'm just looking a little bit about it. Apparently, it's one of his more violent and bloody revenge plays. Mm-hmm. I thought, well, that's just like this movie we watched.
Yeah.
Bloody revenge.
That's why they used it.
All right, now's the time where we say yay or nay to watching this film. So what say you, Kim?
It's a yay for me. I think there's lots to discuss here, even though it does involve quite a bit of dark humor, which is not my wheelhouse. It's an interesting study. And like you said, like someone who really feels on the outside of things and does not deal with his emotions well. So I think it's an interesting look, but it really showcases everything Vincent Price can do. And I know Vincent Price, most people just think of him as the narrator of Michael Jackson's The Thriller. But he was a pretty talented guy, and I think he really gets to showcase a lot of that in this movie. So, and it's just a fun, kind of quick romp through a lot of little Shakespeare plays. Yeah. So it's very inventive and creative. You just have to turn away if you don't want to see the gore. Right. Or take it for what it is. So, yeah.
I think if you like Vincent Price, you're going to love this movie. I think if you love Shakespeare, you're going to be intrigued by this movie.
Sure. Yeah.
If you just like all things British, I think it touches on that, right?
It does. Yeah, definitely.
There's a lot of British things going on here.
It's a very British film. Yes. Very 1970s British.
Yes. Again, it's an odd film in a lot of ways. I think the way they did humor and horror together was interesting and different and, of the 1970s. But like I said earlier, a lot of these scenes that are happening in the movie, like they really spoke to me at a time. I don't know. I'm interested to see or hear what Mike says. Because, Mike left a voice review, so we haven't listened to that yet, but we're about to listen to it.
Okay.
I'm just curious, as a first-time listener, as an adult male, did he like it or did he not like it?
Yeah,
what did I say?
A listener. He's not a first-time listener.
No, he's not.
He listens to us all the time.
It's very late here, and I'm tired.
We don't do well after dark, and it is definitely after dark.
But it's definitely a yay for me.
Yes.
Let's hear what Mike has to say now.
Mike here. Got a chance to see Theater of Blood for the first time, and gotta say that movie is super funny. It's kind of a perfect blend of what Vincent Price can do. I mean, he's kind of in a lot of his movies, it feels like he's playing the same character. In this one, he had a bit of a more of a range of things that he had to play, and he was like perfect for this role. I didn't understand some of the motivations from the characters, but overall, this was super fun. Perfect blend of goriness and kind of a good bridge between the 60s and 70s horror. Favorite scene has got to be the bed scene where he is cutting off the guy's head and the wife thinks he's snoring. You guys have a great time and enjoy the movies.
Thank you, Mike. It's always great to hear from you. And really, anybody who would like to leave us a voicemail of any kind about a movie with your thoughts, the link is in our podcast show notes. So go ahead and if you feel inclined, go ahead and let us hear your voice. So, all right, Kim, what are we doing for our next episode?
All right, so we're still in spooky season, and we thought we'd do a little family-friendly spooky season.
Oh, yeah?
For those of you who might have some young ones around, you want to watch something, with just a little bit of spook to it, but it's clean and wholesome and just good fun. So I would say it's going to be a double header. It's kind of going to be a triple header the next episode, because we're going to be covering The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. That's from 1949. It's a Walt Disney production. And if you're familiar with that, we watched that as kids growing up. It's got a short story about Ichabod Crane and Sleepy Hollow, and it also includes a fun little tale from The Wind in the Willows that includes Mr. Toad and his Antics. So we'll be covering that one. And we're going to cover Casper from 1995. It's a fun little live action. It's based on those old Casper the Friendly Ghost cartoons, but it was a live action that came out in 95 that my sister, who's a little bit younger than I am, was really into. I think I was in high school. I definitely was in high school at the time. She was a little younger. And it's just a sweet little tale that involves Christina Ricci and her dad moving into an old house that, of course, is haunted by Casper the Friendly Ghost and his naughty uncles, I believe is what he calls them. So, and of course, antics ensue from that. So we'll be covering all of those things.
Awesome. Now, Casper is on Peacock. You can also rent it on Amazon, of course. The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad is on Disney+.
That is true. They're on Disney+. And I want to say they're available on Amazon too, but they might be with a rental fee. Yeah,
probably. All right. I think that does it for us. Look forward to talking to you next time.
Yeah, guys. Enjoy your movies. Peace out.